friends. What if I told you that my pancakes, my waffles, my crepes, even my brownies or pizza are good for you? What if I told you that you did not have to demonize those carbs anymore? Well, wouldn't you want to get that recipe? Wouldn't you want to hear how those carbs can actually transform into vegetables, according to culturesforhealth.com? Well, I'm a longtime health blogger. I've taught many people about health in lots of different areas, including grains, and that is what we're going to talk about today. So, grains can be healthy, they can be great for you, or they could be your worst enemy. So, we are going to talk about how they can actually be good for you, but most people think they are bad for you. But let's get back to what the different things are I'm going to talk about today. The history of grains, the science of grains, and how best to safely enjoy them. Now, let's get into it. The history of grains. It's kind of funny, but actually in ancient history, they believed that all grains came down from the heavens and were given by the gods. This came from the ancient Chinese texts as well as the Sanskrit. They believed they were first cultivated by emperors, kings, pharaohs, who were later deemed as gods or their children. Then we also were told that it was a part of worship to have grains and give them as a wave offering to God or the gods, depending on how far you go back. So like that wave offering, that was in Leviticus 2 as part of the offerings in the Bible. References to grains or bread abound in a very positive way in many sayings from the ancient texts. The bread of life, which came down from heaven, was a reference to Jesus, but also a reference of how the grains came down from the heavens, which actually was translated sky in the past. It was said that man cannot live on bread alone, insinuating that grains were a large part of the diet back then. That was in Matthew 4:4. The historical processing of grains was slow, though, through soaking overnight, sprouting, and also fermentation. They didn't have a quick yeast back then as we conveniently use now. While the treatment of grains was not the same as today, the anatomy of them pretty much is, since the domestication of grains about 6,000 to 10,000 years ago. So, the science and anatomy of grains. So like an egg, the grain has three parts. The shell, or the bran layer, the white part, or endosperm, and the yolk, or germ. The grains are bigger now, but they're not actually GMO, as a lot of people would believe. That is not the reason for their toxicity, actually, which also some people would believe. Grains and all seeds do contain a self-serving sort of anti-nutrient, actually called phytic acid, which serves to protect the seed through the digestive tract of animals and people, so they can be whole and sprout later in the ground when expelled. So phytic acid blocks and binds to calcium, zinc, magnesium, copper, iron, and it inhibits enzymes. Phytic acid can be harmless to some due to their strong gut flora and ability to digest fats as well. But others are genetically predisposed to not be able to tolerate grains in any form, and the fats that help digest them, according to westonaprice.org. From my own research on the subject, I've found that this phenomenon comes from the Neanderthal genes. Consequently, white people who are basically identical to them are best able to eat grains and seeds as well as digest the fat better. That said, even white people with Neanderthal genetics are suffering from the wheat belly, irritable bowel syndrome, celiac disease, allergies, and cavities, all believed to be caused by either gluten or phytic acid. But proper handling of grains is actually more important if we want to avoid the issues associated with grains. So how do we enjoy them safely? The bran and germ, which contain most of the nutrients and anti-nutrients, are removed in modern white flour, leaving only the starchy endosperm. So if you want an undigestible cheap filler to cause you constipation, use white flour. Or if you want to turn the starch into a superfood vegetable, ferment it with sourdough starter and turn the starch into a living food. Sourdough pancakes, for instance, can give you probiotics, increase amino acids, basically give you enzymes, and make nutrients accessible. Not only are grains treated with insecticides now, though, before planting, but wheat is treated with a herbicide called Roundup just before harvesting. So this is a toxin to kill the plants just to make the harvest quicker and easier on the machinery. The only way to avoid this toxin is to buy organic. So that is another way to help yourself. While gluten seems to be a problem in some people's minds, imported ancient grains with gluten do not seem to bother some, and when traveling overseas where things like Roundup are outlawed, there doesn't seem to be an issue. So this could be tied to the traditional preparation methods still used in those countries, but it's more likely a problem due to non-organic farming methods. So to kill two birds with one stone, to remove the gluten and the phytic acid, also remember the 3 S's for the 3 methods used on all seeds. Soaking, you do need a little acid like vinegar or lemon juice in with the water. Sprouting and souring. So yes, this is basically how you get rid of all of the problems of grain. Another problem of grain is how it spikes the insulin. You might realize this causes diabetes in people. But if they are soaked, sprouted, or soured, the 3 S's again, you don't have that problem. So keeping these in mind, you are now educated in the topic of grains, and you can no longer eat this stuff naively or improperly prepared unless you want to be sick. Well, you could make life easy and just eat like our ancestors. So, in conclusion, if we look to history to guide us, understand the science of grains and their anatomy, and the treatment, growing, harvesting, and processing of it through the 3 S's, we can knowledgeably choose to be safe and healthy and eat basically any of the good food we want. So help yourself to some brownies.